All right. So I'm gonna start it off. My name is Jeff Carroll, science fiction writer, comic book enthusiast, all around nerd, right? Geek. I'll embrace all those titles. So started making movies 2002, and started making comic books sort of around 2007, 2008. And I write books, comic books, and movies. So this panel is a response to my first trip to PalmCon, where I saw a random panel on everything sci-fi, and it was called the Black Panel, incidentally, and it was on the Friday of Comic-Con, and it was like almost like what you have is an open house or a venting session, but it wasn't a venting session, it was a challenging session. So I imitated that with the Monster Panel. And with the Monster Panel, I have done a variety of topics. Today, one of the main topics was why we love sci-fi. And I find myself at these comic book conventions as an older person who mixes genres. A lot of people that come to comic book conventions are just into comic books, right? I don't read books, and then they kind of started doing movies out of the comic book characters, and that was really successful. We always had Superman, we had other superhero comics, but now they really have Marvel and DC and Star Wars. The mediums have merged. So this is the panel, and this is why I do the panel, because I've allowed the conversation to take place in multiple mediums about some of the same characters. So today's Monster Panel is on the changes in sci-fi since the post-quarantine apocalypse. So a lot of things were going on before the quarantine, but after the quarantine, they took a major transition. It advanced certain things, and it slowed certain things down that might never ever come back. So this is an interactive panel. I have two panelists. One is coming, who's just going to clear things up with his booth, because we have the last panel. And then another panelist who got a flat tire on the way here. And he was my man, so I feel bad for him. But my first question that I wanted to ask the panelists, that I'm going to ask myself, is really about, and also you're welcome to raise your hand at any point, because I don't want this just to be from the table talking all day, because I even forgot to bring my water. But I want to engage the audience. So I know we don't have a lot of people. They got us right up against the quarantine. So come on around, my brother, Gary. Take a seat right here, and we will get this started. I introduced myself, so it would be remiss if I didn't let you introduce yourself. So please tell the good folks who you are.
I am Gary Davis, the creator of content. I create music, movies, and now comic books. And I've done a ton of television things locally, a ton of movie stuff. Did a ton of everything kind of sort of locally here in Palm Beach County.
And you're a Palm Beach guy. How long you been down here?
I've been here since '84. Been here since '84.
Wow.
I started doing, when I got here in '84, I was continuing my music thing. I was producing music albums and things. When I came here in '84, got involved in Miami-based music and worked with a lot of local Miami-based legends in this area. Got a lot of them started, and they became legends.
So now you have your comic book that brings you to the convention here. What comic book do you have?
Right now, I just completed, well, in November I completed my 8th comic book, which is called The Truck Driver, which is part of my sci-fi universe I created in the 2050s. So The Truck Driver is 2052, The Truck Driver, which is a post-apocalyptic movie after World War III. And 7 of the 8 comic books are tied to that. One comic book, 7, is tied to my father. This particular comic book is about the Korean War. It's my father's, one of my father's Korean War stories. But outside that, the rest of them are part of the 2050 series, 2052, which comes from a movie series that I did, which the last one was The Truck Driver, which is also a comic book, but I gave all of them away. This particular comic book here is part of the Two Sisters of Dragon and the Bounty Hunter series. This comic book 4 is a story about how it only takes one. It deals with the gun control issue. Instead of saying guns are good or bad, it's saying, hey, these are some possibilities, think about it. In the flashback sequence, the character, this takes place in 2052, but the characters talk about what happened to their father and mother, which took place in these time periods where they had shootouts at the school and things, and they talk about that and the outcome of it and how it affects people and how one person is woman, how one person can make a difference. In this movie, weapons of mass destruction are flamethrowers and super soldiers and things. It's into the sci-fi thing.
All right, now before you get on, let me ask you, were you always into comic books? How long? And how long have you been in
comic books? For me,
do you consider yourself a nerd? Because you like making bass music. Cool. You're a cool guy. So
it's funny you say that, nerd. I talk to people. It's hard. I come from Camden, New Jersey, which some people say is the worst place in the United States. So
yeah,
can't kind of
there's other places that
I used to work there.
Oh wow.
So you know.
I worked by the Ben Franklin Bridge, summer of '74, across the street from Mayor Ketty's office.
Mary Ketty. My mother went to school with Mary Ketty.
I was the singing waiter at the restaurant there.
Wow. 74.
I lived in Glassboro, and I drove on Route 30, and it was so scary. It just blew my mind to drive there.
I got my degree from Glassboro State.
Oh wow, yeah, I went to I didn't graduate there. I went there. I was a music major.
I was a music major too.
When were you there?
I was there from 74 to 80. Oh.
Do you know Tony Bonaro?
Not offhand, but I tell you he was there when I was there, that I still do. I went there to visit a couple people.
I was a music major there.
Danny DeVito, I mean not Danny, Danny de Blasio, who played with Maynard Ferguson, was there.
I knew him.
Yeah,
I knew his
a
wife,
good friend of
Diane.
mine. Yeah.
Diane DeLude. Remember her?
Danny was there when I was there. Danny was there. George Rabbi, the trumpet player, was there. I just took pictures with him like 2 years ago, because they're there now. Danny is the head of
the. Carl German?
Carl German played the piano for me at my recital.
Yeah.
Carl German very well. Yeah.
Carl German he's still the conductor of Lion King on Broadway for 25 years. He was my roommate. I must have seen you and known you.
Wait a minute, I was the only.
I was a music major.
Yeah, but I'm saying I was the only black music major there outside of Carl Benson. Carl Benson.
Charles Jalbert.
Carl Benson.
You know Charlie Jalbert? He was black.
Oh yeah.
Husky guy. You lived with his mom.
Yeah.
I knew him.
Yeah.
I was there then. 74. I moved there 74. I lived
Y'all
there.
better pull out some pictures.
What was your major?
Music.
No, I'm saying what instrument?
Singing.
I was a composition major.
Yeah, that's why I probably didn't know you that well.
And I was the only composition major there.
Were you?
Yeah. I was Manny Alvin student. Remember Manny Alvin?
Yes.
Yeah. I interviewed I interviewed Manny Alvin at WXCL when I worked at WXCL.
And Moog was there. Remember Moog, Professor Moog? The Moog synthesizer. He was the professor there.
Yeah, I vaguely remember.
All right,
Doctor.
sorry. I'll talk to you later. Sorry.
So, all right, back
Small
to the
world.
That's
Funny how God
all.
works.
I'm learning, right?
Mhm.
So,
Sorry.
my path to, I guess, nerderdom. Of course, I was always interested in Star Wars and all that. I remember going to the movie theater when I was 11 and watching that. But it didn't really manifest until I made my first movie, and that's when I started to get into it more. I read a good book, which became my favorite, and still is my favorite science fiction book, when I worked with some kids in a youth group after I graduated college. I was not fully into it when I was in high school, although I had comic books. But I didn't really turn that corner until I probably moved to Florida, and I made my first movie, and I started realizing what it was about, and I made my first comic book. And I was in my late 30s. And from there, it grew. My first movie screened at a convention in Hollywood, Florida, which was run by Rob and Mike, who later became Spooky Empire and Florida SuperCon. And that's where I met a lot of people, and I knew both of them, and I continued to do the conventions, but I transitioned from a filmmaker to a comic book person to an author. And I've seen the growth, right? So the topic of this panel is what changed, or what changes have taken place in science fiction, comic books, movies, whatever you want to bring, since the quarantine hit. And that would be my first question to you. You know, have you seen anything that you've seen change significantly or a little bit since the quarantine is over? Now we're out, maybe feels like 6 months. You know, I have been my first convention probably sporadically in January. You know, but it still feels like new. You know, I was wearing masks more then. We were socially distanced. Now we're not doing that anymore. So now it's almost back to normal. What do you see change, I guess, in the industry?
Well, for me personally, things still aren't normal. I'm still freaked out. It's very challenging. I managed to somehow actually make more movies and comic books, but me, movies and comic books is pretty much the same thing. It's to me exactly the same thing. I'm doing animation now too, right straight from the comic books. So as a author, as you would say, from an author standpoint, things is pretty much the same as far as the writing thing, because it doesn't interfere with the pandemic, which is probably why I wrote so much. Now I'm thinking about it, because the pandemic forced me not to do production, physical production, but it forced me to do a lot of writing.
Right.
So since the pandemic, I did probably a lot of writing, and I'm working on 2 movies now. I've worked since last August. I'm working on my 4th movie since last, August of 2021.
And what was your production before the quarantine?
Before the quarantine,
Were you doing like 4
I
movies?
generally, no, I would say I average 1 or 2 movies a year.
And now you're doing.
And now,
It's
I
double.
jumped to 4.
Right.
And animation, and my, at least my second animation.
Now, outside of you, right, industry-wise, I, because of me having films, I got back into films in 2019, and right before the quarantine, we wrapped, and Irish is in 2 of the movies. We wrapped production on 2 movies in 1 week at the same time, and I did it because of Tyler Perry had said he did it, and I was like, oh, he's big budget. A small budget guy can do that.
Yeah.
And it planted the seed, and I wrote the scripts and to put the schedule together, and it worked. But the next week, the location that we shot at closed down. And if we had been any type of delay, it would not have been able to be finished. But that's one thing. After quarantine, my movies that had chances to go to Walmart, to go to Target, dried up. Walmart is still doing straight to DVD, but it's more so movies that didn't get to go to theaters.
Yeah.
Once the theaters shut down, it pushed everything to streaming and digital, and I don't blame them, because theater was a money maker, right? And it still is. I'm glad they're back. But like movies like Prey, the Predator sequel, that could have easily come to theaters. But because these streaming platforms have enjoyed the revenue and the increased membership from the theaters being closed, they felt, okay, we got the money, we've always wanted this money, we want to make movies that are theater quality. So their quality has stepped up, and I don't know how long that's gonna last, because theaters are where you make your organic money. It's like crowdfunding for movies, because you're going directly to the consumer, whereas when you get your money from a streaming platform, people aren't buying movies, they're joining platform memberships.
Yeah, people, I found out that from talking to people, to me, the music and music and movie stuff and the way it works is exactly the same. And when things went digital, people don't understand when things went digital. I got this big argument with a distributor about it. When things went digital for music and movies and DVD, money dried up. As an example, in my house, I collect DVDs. I have probably at least 2,000 DVDs in my house. So I would spend probably $100 a month at Blockbuster and Hollywood Video. Literally, I would spend at least $100 on average a month. Got to spend that kind of money in order to have like 2,000 DVDs. But when I stopped spending them, so my daughter starts getting Netflix and streaming it for $10 a month or whatever. So I went from spending at least $100 a month to spending 10. So that's $90 that's missing, multiplied by everybody else that did the same thing. People, the money revenue isn't there that was there before. I tell people the same thing from the difference between comic books and digital comic books and movies versus digital and records. And since I've done music back in '79, that's worth a fortune today. The original copy, I tell people that a digital copy, how much can she get off of a digital copy?
It doesn't increase in value.
Yeah,
it's not physical.
It's not physical. So
I don't care what they Bitcoin it or whatever.
Right.
It's not collectible.
Yeah,
Right.
it's non-collectible. So but I sold a record for $2,500. I did in 1979. $2,500 for a piece of vinyl. Well, how are you going to get that from a digital thing? You're not going to.
Same thing with comic books.
Right. So
you
the
can't
money,
even sign digital books.
the original.
You can stamp them, but it's not the same.
No, but you're not going to be able to. You're not going to be able to sell people. That's why I tell people that I'm not in music, as an example. I'm not interested. At my age, I'm not interested in the digital stuff. I mean, I'll do it, and people release stuff digitally and stuff. But I'm more interested in the vinyl, because once you sell a vinyl record, I showed somebody here that one of the cheapest vinyl records that I did of the Miami bass is $199. $199 for something I did, what, 20, that was only like 25 years ago.
So I think another thing that's changed is, and it was during the quarantine, I don't think it's gonna go back, but it's slowly creeping back, is crowdfunding. With me, if it wasn't for the quarantine, I don't know, I had already been using illustrators and meeting people all around the world and working with them, because digitally, if I had to mail somebody my stuff and get the stuff back in the mail, it would take a lot longer and it would cost more money. But digitally, it allows me to work with people halfway across the world on the other side of the world.
And the funny part that you say that, and you never have to meet them in person.
Never.
I never met my artists in person. Never
Right.
even talked to them on the phone. Everything's done digitally. Same thing with music. There's a lot of people that I work with all over the world musically. Matter of fact, I have a composer, because I don't have time to compose a freaking movie and write it and film it and shoot it and edit it. So I have a composer that I wanted to give the same opportunity that I wanted when I was at Glassboro. It's like,
Right.
how you gonna write for a movie? Never could figure it out. So a young artist out of the UK, a young composer out of the UK, he scores some of the stuff that I'm gonna score myself, or we both do it. But never talked to him in person, never met him on the phone. That was done on, not on Facebook, but on MySpace. I met him on MySpace.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing with this artist, everything is done digitally. So digitally is You know, I met a lot of people digitally. Now, Zoom is good because I talked to some people out of the UK about music projects, so we have a Zoom meeting, so I see them
Right.
face to face. But a lot of people I never really met, so there are possibilities that they exist. You know, like when I went to class.
Well, here's the other thing. You mentioned Zoom, right? And I want to touch on the music thing, but I don't want to drift too far away from comics and sci-fi because I don't know what everybody's into. But you mentioned the Zoom thing. It wasn't until the quarantine that Zoom conference panels became a thing. Like you would have to pay to go to Comic-Con to sit at a panel to get that experience. But because quarantine hit, Comic-Con went virtual. And it was the first time I had so many panels to watch without a membership, right? You know, because you can't, you know, code everything. It's like, you know, music is gonna get out. You know, it's not even pirating anymore. It's just, it is what it is. So you do these private Zoom calls and then they get replayed later. And the only value of joining the Zoom call is that you might be able to make a real question and ask the person something. Otherwise, I watched it and I had panels that I was watching all the way until December from Comic-Con. And I ended up doing the monster panel virtually. And it was cool because I would have to make sure that people were here to be on the panel before the quarantine. Post-quarantine, I could get people from anywhere around the world. If they could stay up late enough or wake up early enough, we could merge and you do it in the middle of the day, you're getting pretty much everybody. So that opportunity opened up and I saw panels from writers and creators that I'd never seen or probably would never be able to see on a panel together. I'm putting a panel together now on just Black history and Black science fiction, you know, because a lot of Black science fiction writers are amateur historians, and I want to just talk about how do we get to decide on what is portrayable and where do you draw the line between something that is so inaccurate that it becomes backlash. So that brings us to the next question, right? We have backlash now, so much that I think we're tired of it. You know, when they first, when there was first backlash to the character Rue in the Hunger Games, it was a deal breaker. It was almost like the movie needs to shut down. They were talking about it on the news and everything. Now we've had so much backlash to the characters being portrayed differently that I almost think that people are tired of it. I think Disney, this new backlash with the mermaid, you know,
What is it? What backlash?
they hit, there was this Halle Berry version of The Mermaid, features a brown skinned mermaid. And there's been backlash, oh my God, we can't take it. But before the backlash came out, Disney released compilations of little girls watching The Mermaid saying, oh my God, I see a mermaid that looks like me. And I'm saying, this child is 6 years old. How long did she not see a mermaid that didn't look like her? You gotta get somebody that's like 40 to say, oh, how does it feel to finally see a mermaid that looks like, because we grew up without that.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I went to go see the Woman King.
Oh man, we're gonna get to that.
I went to go see the Woman King, and I probably was emotional through the whole movie. And I realized that people don't understand that being brought up in, we was talking about this earlier, I'm brought up in Camden, New Jersey, and never even knew that Jamaica and Bahamas and all of them were black islands with black people in them. So I got in a conversation with a person recently who said, was I brainwashed on the type of women that I liked?
Because of the movies?
Because of movies and stuff. And I said, wait a minute. I said, you talking about me? I said, when I was brought up, I tell you who the girls that I was in love with when I grew up. I was in love with Haley Mills from Disney. and Pollyanna.
Any
I
Bond
was
girls
in love
make that
with,
list?
I was in love with Penny Robinson, you know, who was like 18 months older than me, and me and Will Robinson are like a month apart in real life. Okay, so when I was 10 years old, I watched Will Robinson on Lost in Space, and in real life he was in love with Penny, and so was I. So no, I wasn't brainwashed to the women that I like, because I never seen a black people at all on TV until black exploitation when I was almost in college.
Foxy Brown.
Right.
Yeah, but I was
I know that. That was
no.
74, Foxy Brown.
Yeah, but I was.
I know
It's
you
sort
were-
of, no,
you were 20.
it's 70. Yeah, right, exactly.
Well,
So
I have a question. Now,
yeah.
this is just
So
popping
this
in my
is-
head.
yeah, this is a big
In the
deal.
20s to 40s,
Yeah.
there was ethnic cinema. There was black cinema, there was Jewish and Yiddish, there was Ukrainian American. Has that disappeared? Because
Okay,
there
no,
were
well,
black
well,
films made
I-
by black people for black
let me
people.
Right.
let
That's
me
a good
explain
question.
to
I don't know
right,
anything
right.
about it.
I
because
know that's why.
I just
right.
remembered it right
Yeah.
now at this moment when you said that.
That's why it's important to realize that. Okay, based on what you just said, my emotional feelings when I seen that movie are not. I can't hide them. I mean, it was like I was overwhelmed. So this is the best picture I've ever seen, because it was unbelievable, because I seen, first of all, Foxy Brown and all of them were people like, well, you said you was in Camden, so that was like where I lived.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that wasn't.
Foxy Brown.
It wasn't
I was
transported.
at the White Horse. I was at the White Horse Pike watching Foxy
Right.
Brown.
Well, what I'm saying is those black exploitation movies
Right.
were real life for people from
Right.
the hood. I mean,
It was like reality TV.
But
Yeah,
It was
right.
like
It was
reality
TV.
Right.
It's different from seeing that than going to see, like I seen all the gladiator movies you could think of. Steve Reeves and everybody, all my life I've seen gladiator movies, everything, and they're great movies, and I love the movies. But when you actually see a movie with a black person doing it, and they're not the slave, or they're not the, it is unfreaking believable. Especially when I'm pushing 70. So
Right.
at my age, to see something like that, it was overwhelming. I could not, I mean, it was so,
Do you think that
never know how deep that was. It's like, wow, people,
I have a question.
it's overwhelming.
There was an ethnic film industry that had black films in the 1930s and 40s. What happened to
Well,
that?
let me give you an
respond to
example.
this.
Spike Lee, you know.
How come we never saw them?
But let me give you an example. Spike Lee, as an example, makes black movies that deal with reality of black people.
Right.
But for me, I went to movies to escape from reality.
Right. And still do.
And still do.
And still
right.
do.
I don't want to see. I don't want to see. Oh man, here goes another. I don't want to see that. I want to see the same thing she wants to see. I want to see whatever you like to see. That's what I want to see.
You know what's here's the other thing.
I don't want to see.
Your question was, did we see them? Yeah, of course we saw.
How come how come there's no?
Well, of
They're
course,
different kinds.
of course,
I'm
they-
saying, how come those movies aren't being shown from the 30s and 40s of black film industry, the Yiddish film, the Ukrainian American? There was the whole industry.
Who knows?
How could they
Who
be
knows?
gone?
I think you would have to go to Hollywood, because I think the success of those films, right, are basic success for films.
Right.
Same thing that happened to B movies. Whatever happened to the budget movie you saw before the A movie in the theater?
Yeah.
Because I remember that. What happened to it is, well, now Jordan Peele is making B movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Snakes on the Plane is a B
Yeah.
movie. They've been absorbed by the mainstream film market. So those films that you just asked,
Right.
where did they go? They became Spike Lee.
But
They
I'm
became.
saying, why didn't you guys see them when you were kids, or why didn't your
We
grandparents
saw
tell you
them.
about them?
No,
we
no,
saw
You
them.
did?
Yeah.
Okay.
No. What I'm saying is that the movies that we've seen as the black movies
With common stories.
were only one type of movie.
Right, but it was
It's just
industry,
like,
it was made specifically for black people, the way that Yiddish.
yeah, but
films
it
were
was
made for Jewish
only
people.
about black reality that we were living, not about the fantasy that we wanted to escape of. It wasn't like we didn't see movies. That's why Black Panther was so big
And
because-
groundbreaking.
Yeah, and groundbreaking because black people, when a little girl, you know, my comic books
It wasn't a
works
separate
very well
universe.
for women because
Okay.
little black girls look at them and see themselves and stuff, and it's like it is. If you, unless you've been in a position where you never seen yourself before,
Right.
you can't. It's hard to understand. But when you see, like the movie we talked about, Lion King, when you see women that look like your mom, and look like my sister, and look like my niece, and it ain't doing things that you never seen black people do on TV, it's like unbelievable. When you see what's the Housewife of Atlanta or something, whatever them reality shows are,
Right.
it's like. It's like even Medea is an example. Medea is 100% my mother-in-law.
Right.
My
Everybody
wife-
got a Medea in it.
Right. But it's so for people who are not black, Medea is funny in a different kind of a way. But for black people, oh, that's my mom. That's
Right.
my mother-in-law. That's this. It's reality for us.
Mhm.
But let us see some of the Star Wars stuff. Let us see some black people do something. We want to see ourselves do something, or me. I want to see them do something more than what we're really going through.
Or here's the other thing. What Black Panther did, and what I
Yeah.
think the Woman King is doing, is that it's not a separate niche audience.
Right.
You know, it's mainstream. It's a different. There's a difference between.
Yeah, white woman wrote that movie.
Right.
By the way.
French.
Yeah.
Right. So
all the
hold on a
okay,
second.
sorry.
So no. It's the difference is that it's not niche. It's not
Right.
private.
Right.
It's public. Black Panther wasn't a separate universe. It
Right.
was Marvel. He was there with Captain America. He was there with the space alien Thor.
Mm-hmm.
And he was competing with them equally in a way that we hadn't had it before.
Right.
Black people always knew we could fight. But until we went in the ring with a world champion, we were validated. So Black Panther did that validation. What the Woman King is doing, I guess how it ties in to where we are right now, it took us to that epic level.
Yeah.
And to say we had something epic as well. And our story is epic. We had epic fighting. We don't know the African
Right.
martial arts.
Right,
But
right,
there is
right.
an
But
African
that-
martial arts
Right.
that knows it's
Yeah.
African
Right.
martial arts,
Yeah.
but the world doesn't see. We grew up on
Right.
kung fu movies that
Right.
took their moves from Africans.
Right.
But we don't see those moves on the stage. So now, Woman King is doing that, but it's also doing, there's a genre called sword and soul. One of my questions deals with the backlash, which is different from Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings being integrated. These are big epic stories of great army battles. We have the biggest great army battles right in Africa. Now, the Woman King is putting that so everybody can see it. And that is what I guess makes it feel different. I sat next to my wife, and on the other side I had a Latino gentleman, and on the other side of my wife was a white woman. And the slave trade is what the Woman King is about. That's not a black story. That's a world story.
Human story.
It's a human world story.
Right.
It wasn't the story of something that happened in a particular area. The transatlantic human trafficking trade was a global business operation. It might be the first time the world operated on something together. That is amazing. And the way the story is told, it's allowing that to happen. This isn't the 300, which is important to that particular area of the world. This isn't Braveheart, which is important to that particular part of the world. The transatlantic trade was something that changed world economies.
Right.
It's why we have superpowers, why we have companies, right? Shell Motor. These are companies that didn't just do nasty things. They participated in this global business operation, right? That built countries. And so that story is amazing. For it to be told on that level, it's groundbreaking. And I think going back to my question, right? I think why we have so much backlash, right? Is because now we are invading. We're not just these little Yiddish movies that are niche audience. we're now integrating into the mainstream audience.
But the thing my theme is always to look back in history to see how it got to this point, because I'm a historian. For
Right.
example, when I went to see Bamboozled, Spike Lee, my wife and I were the only white people in the audience. I loved that movie. I thought it was amazing. But I also saw it was a combination of few different things. It was a combination of some themes from the Mel Brooks movie, The Producers. Because you're familiar with it.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
Same
yeah.
concept, different ethnicity,
Right.
you know?
So, sometimes in Spike Lee's case,
He went overboard in that film, I believe.
Well, no,
By the
no,
end-
no,
the ending was
I
like,
don't
this
know.
is the big
Yeah, well, yeah, yes, he went
But that's
overboard.
Spike
to say-
Lee, right?
Right, but he goes overboard to make a point the same way Quentin Tarantino does.
Or the way Jordan Peele did it in
Right,
Us.
well, they all do. Yeah, Quentin
Right,
Tarantino does the same thing. They overdo it to make the point. They overdo something. But for
Right,
a lot of
Quentin
black
Tarantino is good
for
example.
a lot of black folks, seeing Bamboozle is. A lot of us just don't want to see reality.
It's
Put it that
also
way.
history, it's a history lesson.
Yeah, but is it? Yeah, but it's a difference between.
People like fiction.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
it goes back to what you said, escapism.
Right. We don't want to see the harsh realities. Black people don't want to see.
That was a fictionalized version
Well,
of
put it
a
this way.
historic truth.
Right, but it's a painful
Wait, no, I'm gonna
story.
give you.
Yes, it
No,
is.
no, wait, no. I had the perfect. Wait, I had the perfect analogy. It would be the equivalent of my Jewish friends seeing movies that was almost always about the Holocaust, okay, and about them pain and suffering and stuff. You guys, well, I don't know whether or not you would want to go see it, but your children and stuff wouldn't want to go see a movie dealing with the Holocaust.
I want to respond to that, let me just tell you
Yeah,
personal.
yeah,
I'm half Jewish.
yeah. I know.
I'm
That's
Jewish,
why
but-
I'm giving you that
but my
example.
point is,
Yeah,
I grew up in the 70s,
yeah.
hearing about how I was a freaking victim. All the movies were about the Holocaust. All the movies were about people
Right.
walking, Jews walking like sheep. My response was to spend 29 years writing a book about Jewish resistance in Nazi Germany.
Right, but that's
But
that's
how-
right.
that's
That's
the
the point.
woman king.
That was
Wait a
my
minute.
response.
Right, and
Right.
and that's the
And it got
that
published
women-
10 years
right,
ago.
and that's the point I'm trying to make. You don't want to see a movie, right? And that's the Lion King.
Right.
That's our answer.
The Woman King.
Women, what you said is
But
100%
I'm gonna
right.
connect this to you and also to talk about the
Right,
history.
and that's what the Lion King represents. The Lion King
The Woman
represents
King.
the Woman King represents the Woman King
That's
represents us
entertaining.
as not being victims, but us being resistant
Also,
to the power of the
let me
force.
let me hook into that. Let me connect with that. And the blackface minstrel show, I did a lot of research on this. I did an article, I did numismatic articles, I did research, I looked at films.
Mm-hmm.
Bamboozle inspired me to learn more. What I
Oh, of
learned
course.
was, now there's always a controversy about somebody doing blackface 30 years ago in college, okay?
Mhm.
It was 30 years ago. It wasn't good, but that's how it was back then. There's music rock videos with blackface from the 80s. Yeah, I still see them. They're still on. You can see them on YouTube. However, but my point is, blackface minstrel show was the biggest original form of American theater from the 1840s, and it was the most popular form into the 1920s. So it was like endemic.
Evolving, yeah.
However, and this is important, and I learned this from doing a lot of research. Many black performers got their start from being blackface minstrel performers, and I think that's what Spike Lee was pulling from, because
Right.
that's where a lot of black success in showbiz was replacing the white performers and doing the terrible Stepin Fetchit show in blackface as a caricature. However, that enabled black people to be prominent in show business, and there were even companies, full black companies, that did blackface minstrel shows. They were not successful as whites, but they were successful, and they were there, and they did make an impact. And
And
that's
I-
what I was trying to make a point
and I
of.
think the way
And that's
he-
what I think Spike Lee was trying to tap into.
Right.
Yeah, but what he was saying is that part of it, he was pointing out that part of it is can be perceived as a negative thing, the way that some people are anti Tyler Perry, okay,
Right.
because they believe that Tyler Perry is perpetuating a stereotype. The reason why it's important is because some people man, and I can give you examples of it just being here today. So if you are a young police officer and you've never been around black people, and the only thing you've seen is Foxy Brown, all that kind of stuff, what it does is brainwash you to fear somebody like me. Because when I hand out
prejudice,
right? Because when I hand out comic books to people and everything, I can sense some people's systemic. Well, I would say it's a natural fear. The fear I understand, because if you haven't been around me and the only thing you see is people with dreads, every time you see people with dreads, they're on the news because they murdered somebody or did something crazy.
That's why they don't even want to call them dread anymore. They want to call them
Right.
locks, because dread is what you felt when you saw
Yeah.
them. You were dreading them,
Right.
so that's why they want to call them locks. There's a
Right.
big movement
Right.
around calling them locks.
Yeah, right. So, but the point I'm trying to make is that it is the point that Spike Lee. That's why Spike Lee and Tyler Perry bump heads and stuff is because Spike Lee said, "Hey, look, we worked hard to get away from that. We're doing Woman King.
Right.
We don't need to do the stuff that's tied to our past that has negative connotations and things,
Or simple-minded.
or a simple-minded thing, because it gets to the point where people like my great nieces and nephews and stuff glorify that behavior, when I want them to understand that the behavior of America is American, and this is mainstream America, and this is what we should be aiming for, the same thing that she would aim for. You follow me? But if you see a bunch of Tyler Perry movies and you see the girl with the thing and everything, everybody's running around acting that way, and everything is not helping our society grow and black people
But he's
grow.
also, Spike Lee didn't use Bamboozled as a tool to show how that kind of entertainment, that blackface entertainment was a stepping stone for black people to make a real impact in show business. He didn't use that.
Right.
He
No,
only
no.
used it as a negative. He didn't,
Yeah, but-
he didn't look
but
at the
the
positive,
point-
and there was a positive.
Well, here's the thing.
Based
Okay.
on my research.
Here's the thing, right? So we have this conversation going on in sports, right? Who's the best home run hitter? Barry Bonds, right? Before him, we had Babe
Aaron.
Ruth, right? Right? Babe Ruth, right?
Karen didn't take steroids.
Right, well, so you're right. So, but then we look before integration and say, well then, should all those players have a asterisk next to there? Because they didn't have fair, open competition. They only were able to compete against other white players. And we see how we compete on the world stage, on the global ethnic diversity stage. So when you're looking at the film, right, and the characters and the film companies, yeah, you say, like for me, okay, American Dance is the tap dance. There's so much asterisk around the tap dance.
It's the Irish jig. It's
Listen what I'm
English-
saying, listen what I'm saying.
Sorry.
You are totally correct, right?
It's a cultural mix.
It's a cultural mix, but it has a asterisk around it from the condition of the environment at the time period. So some of those things, like for instance, when we're talking about diversity, the diversity we have now is in a free post Barack Obama, whatever you want to call it, post segregation environment where we don't have to necessarily be limited with diverse cultures, whether it's black people, Indian people, they're not limited by white companies' approval. We have been liberated through direct streaming. We have been liberated through direct uploading of our music. So we don't need the gatekeepers that we used to have anymore saying, oh my God, this is gonna offend somebody. So that's why I personally see a lot of the companies, the large companies, trying to play catch up, and they're pandering. So now what is pandering? They're trying to tap into a market that the independents have revealed is there. Okay.
It is.
And this is the last
I'll
question.
give you a good example. It's like it's like writing numbers. Okay, and in Harlem, right? They wrote numbers, and all of a sudden everybody found out. Wait a minute,
That's the lottery.
these black people are making a lot of money off of that. And then the big mob stepped in to take all that over because it was a black thing in the black community that were making a whole lot of money.
Right.
And then it got absorbed. And then the Italian mob and stuff took over all that kind of stuff.
And now the
Yeah.
government
And
took
it's the
over
same
it,
thing.
and now we
Wait a
running.
minute, it's like rap music, right? The rap music was the same way. All the independents did the rap music and everything. You know, big companies took over all the rap.
Yep.
You know, we don't even own rap no more.
So
in
it-
jazz, the same thing happened. Definitely happened in jazz.
Here's the I guess the last question I'm going to end with, right? And you sort of alluded to it. Are we at a diversity overload? And why I say that is I mentioned the word pandering. To me, I see the LGBT community, I see the black community, I see the Asian community, I see all of these different communities that had their niche, right? We could also say there was underserved, but they were underserved by the mainstream, right? Now they're playing catch up. Do you think there's a diversity overload in I guess I'm just gonna limit it to science fiction and horror and all this nerd stuff?
I say yes in a good way.
Okay.
Okay, it's definitely an overload.
Right, it's too much sun, but it's still a good thing.
But I think it's a great thing. I think what happened is because of the world affairs and things, young people are realizing that, hey, this is pretty messed up. We ain't going for it. We're
Right.
not tolerating all this crap and everything, and so they're making a huge difference, and then they can see the difference between their parents and their grandparents and stuff, and look and say, maybe we need to make some few adjustments, and because that is definitely happening, and things are changing for the better in every kind of way. So now everybody's saying, Black America is saying we're important, Asian America is saying we're important, Jewish Americans saying we are important, LGBT community said we're important. You know, everybody's saying they're important, and people say, hey, you know, these people are important. Not only are they important, but we can make money off of them if we pander to them. and so
put them in.
Let me be devil's advocate. Throw something else in there. You know, remember the Balkans? Remember Yugoslavia?
Yes.
What happened there? What was the problem in Yugoslavia? All these different groups were for themselves, not for the blending. We have a balkanization in this country because all these groups see themselves as unto themselves.
Well, no,
and
I think
not
it's
a
different.
blending.
I think it's different when you see, and I'm going to say when you see LGBT, a gay person, right, in a mainstream movie, that's not them having their own movie.
Right.
That's having them join in the mainstream. When they say, okay, Superman's son is gay, right? That's not
But
him
that
having
is-
a gay
okay.
Superman. You
Oh,
understand what I'm saying?
okay,
So
yeah.
it's not all separate. They're competing. So when black people invade Game of Thrones, right?
Right.
I feel that's diversity overload, right? Because I enjoyed Game of Thrones, but I said, and this is one universe that I don't want to have black people in, because this is a European simulated story. However, they did it anyway, and got my son saying, well, where were all the black people in The Lord of the Rings? Did they just come up with a virus that killed them all? Because this is a prequel. You know what I'm saying? My son said, I'm happy to see the black people, but what happened to them in the sequels? And I said, you're right, it's called Middle Earth. I don't know, are they on top Earth or they at bottom Earth? I don't know where they are. I just think it's a real challenge, and I understand the pandering, but what makes it pandering and not good is when it doesn't merge good. When the writer doesn't write it well, it has to make sense.
If you just throw a character just because they're gay or they're a drag queen, it's pandering, and it doesn't. And
It's funny you say that.
In the gay community,
because
that is definite. But you know, they said, "Oh, there's a coming out." I'm like, well, if they were that before, then you still have to explain how they are the way they are and how they came out and all that. It becomes a whole different story. You just can't have somebody fly down and be like, "Hey."
I found out that when I did an experiment one time, an interesting experiment.
That's it.
I worked with a
We are finished.
acting class, and in the acting class, I wrote a script. In the script, I used male, female names. I gave all the character male and female names.
Right.
Like Jackie, Frankie, Jackie, Bobby, because it could be Bobby Sue or Bobby Joe or whatever, or Robert. I gave all the characters names that could be male or female. And then people pick the characters, and the characters determine the relationships. Because when you write a script, when you really write a script, well, the average movie doesn't go into the person's gender anyway. That's kind of
Unless the story is about that.
Right.
Love stories do.
Unless it's exactly. So
Right.
in any of these books, technically any character could be gay or whatever. So that if I want to turn this into a movie, I could turn any character.
Because the story might not be
Right, 'cause
about their
it's- right,
sexuality.
Right, exactly. So to me, I learned, because a lot of times I used to do things and I said, well, I gotta try to make this character this way. It works better when you write it and you don't take those things into consideration, and you take them into consideration after you got the thought pattern.
Yeah, let the story
Unless,
flow.
like you said, unless I'm writing about that.
Unless it's a love story.
Right.
Right? And I mean, the love story component has been played to too high. It was like,
But
oh,
even
he gets the girl.
But even
at
when
the
you
end,
do,
you
yeah.
know.
But even like I said in the exercise, okay, Jackie and Frankie could be male and male. They could be male and
Right,
female. They could
right.
be, you
Depending
know
on
what
the
I mean?
interaction, depending on the dialogue between them. If it's romantic.
Well, no.
To a certain
Yeah,
extent.
but this is the trick that I'm saying
Right.
in this particular exercise. Okay, it's a romantic thing between Jackie and what you call him. But the way that the exercise was that me as a writer wrote it so that it didn't matter. You know, only thing that mattered was if two girls played a part. The script is the same whether two girls played a part or a girl and a guy or two guys. It's exactly the same. So their relationship, they're still gonna have a romantic interlude, but depending on how it gets casted,
Right.
determines.
But
That's fact.
Hill, I'll say this one to you, right? And we gotta close because we got like 5 minutes to pack up. But I saw the movie Everything All at Once. I don't know if you saw that. It's gonna be one of my top 10 movies of the year. I don't know. I'm playing around with it, but it's an original Asian story, and we
gotta see
think
it.
that ethnicity is interchangeable, just like you alluded to, that gender and sexual preference may be. It is in a larger story, right? Person meets here, falls in love with here, they get separated, they come back together, he got to save her. That is universal. But the way the person may talk, what they may be eating, how they approach each other, has to be specific to whoever that character is. You can't just sub out a black person and put in a white person. It may seem like it works, but then black people are like, well, I wouldn't be saying it that way. And an Asian person be like, ah. And you, even as you're not aware, when I saw Everything All at Once, I was like, this is an Asian story. And the way the Friends model was that everybody was friends. They ain't gotta be enemies, but they certainly behave different. And when you see, like I have a sister-in-law of mine, she says she loves watching Korean movies.
Oh yeah.
Why do we love Korean movies? It's so different, and you can tell when a Korean character is written in an American movie, they behave totally different.
Yeah.
When they're in a Korean movie, they behave the way Korean people behave, and it's beautiful.
It reminds me of seeing a dub movie on Netflix because I live in a Spanish-speaking community.
Yes.
And then I see these people talking from England,
Right.
talking for the Spanish people, and it's like it just doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Well, I want to thank you
Does
all.
not work.
He's at a table. I'm at another table. We probably got like 5 minutes to give us the
And
last.
feel
panel.
free to take a
Eric
comic
Brothers.
book.
Free, come and meet us.
Get your
But
card,
thank you
take a
very
picture.
much.
I want to send the Carl Jones. My friend of mine's in touch with Carl. I'm not.
You got
Okay?
to,
Or you have
yeah.
a picture?
Oh,
They had that
absolutely.
sitting there. I don't even know if it works.